My name is Rihanna, and today I'm finally ready to tell the story I've kept buried in my heart for years. People often say that no one can love you like your mother. I used to believe that too. But my childhood taught me something very different. I wasn't an orphan. I wasn't abandoned. I lived in the same house as my parents every single day. Yet somehow, I always felt like I was the forgotten child. Before I begin, I want to make one thing clear. This isn't a story about hatred. It isn't a story about jealousy. It's a story about betrayal by the people I trusted most, and about how life eventually taught them a lesson they never expected. If you're listening to my story today, thank you. I hope no child ever has to experience what I went through. I grew up in a beautiful home with my parents and my younger sister Alice. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. We had a comfortable life. My father owned a successful business. My mother was respected in our neighborhood. People often told us how lucky we were. If only they knew what happened behind our front door. My sister Alice was incredibly beautiful. She had bright eyes, flawless skin, and a smile that could light up any room. Everywhere we went, people admired her. Oh my goodness, she's gorgeous. She looks like a princess. She's going to have such a wonderful future. Whenever people praised Alice, my mother's face would glow with pride. She loved hearing those compliments. Then people would turn toward me. "This must be your older daughter." They smiled politely. No one ever called me beautiful. No one ever called me special. I was just Rihanna. At first, I didn't think much about it. I was only a little girl. I believed mothers loved all their children equally. But slowly, I began noticing little things. Very little things. Yet those tiny moments slowly broke my heart. Whenever my mother bought new clothes, Alice always received the prettier dress. If there was only one chocolate left in the house, she gave it to Alice. If guests visited, my mother would proudly call Alice into the living room. "Come here, sweetheart. Show everyone how beautiful you've become." Meanwhile, I stayed in my bedroom. Sometimes the guests didn't even know another daughter existed. One afternoon, I gathered enough courage to ask, "Mom, don't you want me to sit with everyone too?" She barely looked at me. "They're here to meet Alice. You wouldn't understand." I quietly walked back to my room. That was the first night I cried myself to sleep. My father wasn't a bad man. He loved both of us. Whenever he noticed me feeling sad, he would hug me. "You're my strong girl," he always said. Those words meant everything to me. But my father spent most of his time working. He wasn't home enough to see how differently my mother treated us. Whenever he did notice something, my mother always laughed it off. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I treat both girls the same." My father believed her. I wished he had looked a little closer. School became my safe place. I loved studying. I worked hard. Whenever exams came, I stayed up late reading books while Alice preferred shopping and spending time with friends. When the report cards arrived, I came home excited. "Mom, I got first place in my class." I expected a hug, maybe even a smile. Instead, she barely looked up. "That's nice." Just then Alice walked inside wearing a beautiful new dress. My mother's face instantly lit up. "Oh, Alice. That dress looks amazing on you." For the next 30 minutes, they talked about clothes, hairstyles, and makeup. No one asked about my report card again. I quietly folded it and placed it inside my school bag. That night, I realized something. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough. As we grew older, people constantly compared us. "Alice is so beautiful. Rihanna is responsible. Alice will marry a rich man. Rihanna will probably become a teacher." People spoke as if our futures had already been decided. Every compliment Alice received made my mother happier. Every compliment I received seemed invisible. I never blamed my sister. She wasn't the one creating this difference. She simply enjoyed the love that every child deserves. The problem wasn't Alice. The problem was that my mother believed beauty mattered more than kindness. One summer afternoon, I overheard my mother talking to one of her friends. She didn't know I was standing outside the kitchen. Alice wasn't home. Her friend asked, "Which daughter do you think will have the better future?" Without hesitation, my mother replied, "Obviously Alice. She's beautiful. Beautiful girls marry rich men. Rihanna is just ordinary. She'll have to struggle in life." Every word felt like a knife piercing my heart. I quietly walked back to my room before they could see me crying. That sentence stayed with me for years. Rihanna is just ordinary. Those 4 words became the voice inside my head every time I doubted myself. As teenagers, Alice and I shared the same bedroom. She often noticed when I cried. One evening she sat beside me. "Rihanna, are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." She knew I was lying. She gently held my hand. "I know Mom treats us differently. I've noticed. You deserve better." For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. But what could she do? She was only my sister. She couldn't change our mother. So I smiled and changed the subject. I didn't want Alice carrying guilt for something that wasn't her fault. Years passed. I finished college with excellent grades. I found a stable job. I was proud of myself. My father congratulated me. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words healed a tiny piece of my broken heart. But my mother simply nodded. "You should focus on getting married now." That was all she said. No congratulations. No celebration. Nothing. Meanwhile, whenever Alice bought a new handbag or received compliments from relatives, my mother celebrated as though she had won an international award. I stopped expecting fairness. Life became easier when I expected nothing. Then came the day that changed everything. One evening my mother called both of us into the living room. She looked happier than I had seen her in years. "Alice has received a marriage proposal." The groom belonged to one of the wealthiest families in the city. My mother almost cried with happiness. She immediately began planning a grand wedding. Relatives visited every day. The house was filled with excitement. I smiled and helped with every preparation. Deep inside, I wondered why no one cared that I was the older daughter. Traditionally, I was expected to marry first. But no one even asked how I felt. One night, my father quietly came into my room. "I'm sorry." He looked at me with sadness. "I know this is difficult." I smiled gently. "It's okay, Dad. I only want Alice to be happy." He hugged me tightly. That hug reminded me that at least one person still saw me. I didn't know then that my own marriage and the biggest betrayal of my life was just around the corner. And I certainly had no idea that one day, the same family who looked down on me would stand speechless in front of me, realizing they had underestimated me all along. After Alice's wedding, life in our house became strangely quiet. My mother couldn't stop talking about how successful the wedding had been. For weeks, she showed everyone the photographs. She proudly told our relatives, neighbors, and even complete strangers how her beautiful daughter had married into one of the richest families in the city. Whenever someone visited, she brought out Alice's wedding album. "Look at my daughter," she would say with pride. "Isn't she beautiful? Her husband comes from such a wealthy family." I would sit nearby, smiling politely, even though it felt as if I didn't exist. No one asked me how I was doing. No one asked if I had dreams of my own. I had simply become the invisible daughter. A few months later, I met someone who completely changed my life. His name was Daniel. Unlike the men my mother admired, Daniel wasn't flashy. He didn't wear expensive watches or designer suits. He drove an ordinary car and lived a simple life. The first thing I noticed about him wasn't his appearance. It was his kindness. He respected everyone, whether they were rich or poor. He listened when people spoke. He never judged anyone. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. We became friends, and before long, we fell in love. One evening, while we were walking through a quiet park, Daniel stopped, looked into my eyes, and said softly, "Rihanna, I don't promise you a perfect life. But I promise you'll never have to question whether you're loved." No one had ever said words like that to me before. I smiled through happy tears and said yes when he asked me to marry him. When I told my parents about Daniel, my father's first question was simple. "Is he a good man?" I smiled. "He's the best man I've ever known." My father nodded. "Then that's enough for me." But my mother had different questions. "What does he do? How much money does he make? What kind of house does he own? What car does he drive? I answered every question honestly. He owns a small business. He lives comfortably. He isn't rich. The moment she heard those words, her expression changed. She looked disappointed. So, after all your education, this is the man you chose? I quietly replied, I chose someone who loves me. She laughed sarcastically. Love doesn't pay bills. Those words hurt, but I refused to argue. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. Unlike Alice's extravagant ceremony, ours was filled with genuine laughter and love. My father blessed us with tears in his eyes. My mother attended, but she spent most of the ceremony comparing it to Alice's wedding. She whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Alice's wedding was much grander. Even on my wedding day, she found a way to make me feel less important. Daniel gently squeezed my hand. He whispered, Ignore the noise. Today is about us. I smiled, knowing I had married the right man. After our marriage, we moved into a cozy home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was filled with peace. Every morning, Daniel made coffee for both of us. Every evening, we ate dinner together and talked about our day. For the first time in my life, I understood what a happy home truly felt like. A year later, we welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby boy. 2 years after that, we were blessed with a lovely daughter. Our home echoed with laughter. Daniel was a wonderful father. He never missed birthdays, school events, or bedtime stories. Watching him with our children healed wounds I had carried since childhood. I promised myself that my children would never feel unloved the way I once had. Even though my own family rarely called, I still tried to maintain our relationship. Whenever there was a festival, I called my parents first. I sent gifts on birthdays. I visited whenever I could, but my efforts were rarely returned. Whenever my mother hosted a family gathering, Alice was always invited first. Sometimes I learned about the events only after seeing photos online. One day, I gathered the courage to ask, Mom, why didn't you tell me about the family dinner? She answered casually, Oh, I thought you would be busy. But I knew the truth. She simply hadn't wanted me there. The years passed, and my children began asking questions. One Sunday morning, my son ran into the kitchen with excitement. Mom, can we visit Grandma today? I made a drawing for her. My daughter clapped happily. I miss Grandma. How could I refuse? No matter how much my mother had hurt me, I never wanted my children to lose the chance to know their grandparents. So we packed some homemade sweets, flowers, and my son's drawing, then drove to my parents' house. As soon as my mother opened the door, I knew we weren't welcome. She looked surprised. Oh, you came. There was no hug, no smile. She barely looked at my children. They politely greeted her. Hello, Grandma. She simply nodded and walked away. My heart sank. A little later, Alice arrived with her husband and children. The moment their car entered the driveway, my mother's face lit up with joy. She rushed outside, hugged Alice tightly, kissed her grandchildren, and called everyone into the house. My beautiful daughter is here. The dining table quickly filled with delicious food. Special desserts appeared from the kitchen. My children quietly watched everything. No one offered them their favorite snacks. No one asked about school. No one admired the drawing my son had made with so much love. He slowly folded the paper and slipped it back into his pocket. That simple action broke my heart. On the drive home, the car was unusually quiet. Then my little son looked at me through the rearview mirror. Mom, did I do something wrong? I smiled gently. No, sweetheart. Then why doesn't Grandma hug us like she hugs Alice's children? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. How do you explain favoritism to a child? How do you tell your children that sometimes adults fail to love fairly? I reached back and held his tiny hand. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people make mistakes. But you're Dad, and I love you more than anything. Daniel looked at me with understanding. He knew how much those words had hurt me. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, I sat on the balcony in silence. Daniel joined me with 2 cups of tea. He placed one in my hands and asked softly, Are you okay? Tears rolled down my cheeks. I've spent my whole life trying to earn my mother's love. I studied hard. I respected her. I never argued with her. I always forgave her. But no matter what I do, she'll always choose Alice. Daniel wrapped his arm around my shoulders. He looked into my eyes and said, Rihanna, some people spend their whole lives chasing love from those who are unable to give it. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. You already have a family that loves you. His words brought me comfort. For the first time, I stopped blaming myself. Maybe the problem had never been me. Maybe I had been enough all along. I just couldn't see it because I had spent my life trying to win the approval of someone who had already decided I would never be enough. Little did I know, life was about to take an unexpected turn. Within a few months, my father would buy a magnificent new mansion. He would throw the biggest celebration our family had ever seen. Everyone would be invited. Everyone except me. And that night, the truth about my husband would leave my entire family speechless. Life went on, and although my mother's behavior never changed, I tried to stop expecting anything from her. I focused on my husband, Daniel, and our two beautiful children. They became my entire world. One afternoon, while I was helping my daughter with her homework, my phone rang. It was my cousin. Rihanna, are you excited for Uncle's housewarming party? She asked. I froze. Housewarming party? What party? There was a long silence on the other end. You didn't get an invitation? My heart sank. She quickly changed the subject, but it was too late. I understood everything. My father had bought a magnificent new mansion, and everyone in the family had been invited. Everyone. Except me. I thanked my cousin, ended the call, and sat quietly on the couch. Daniel noticed the tears filling my eyes. What happened? He asked gently. I handed him my phone. My father is having a housewarming party, I whispered. They invited everyone except me. For a few moments, Daniel said nothing. Then he held my hand. He's still your father, he said. Let's go. We won't go for your mother. We'll go to bless your father and congratulate him. I looked at him. They don't want us there. That may be true, he replied. But kindness doesn't depend on how others treat us. His words gave me strength. We bought a thoughtful gift, dressed simply, and drove to my parents' new house. As we reached the mansion, I was amazed. Luxury cars filled the driveway. The entrance was decorated with fresh flowers and sparkling lights. Guests in expensive clothes walked inside laughing and chatting. For a moment, I wondered if I truly belonged there. We walked toward the entrance. My father was greeting guests warmly. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened with surprise. Rihanna, he said. Before he could come forward, my mother stepped between us. Her smile disappeared. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. I took a deep breath. Mom, I heard about the new house. I came to congratulate Dad. She folded her arms. I don't remember inviting you. Her words were loud enough for several guests to hear. People turned and stared at us. I felt my face burn with embarrassment. Daniel remained calm. We only came to wish your husband happiness in his new home, he said politely. After a few awkward moments, my father spoke. Let them come in. Reluctantly, my mother moved aside. Inside the mansion, everything looked grand. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. A live band played soft music. Waiters served delicious food. Businessmen, politicians, and wealthy families filled the hall. My mother proudly introduced Alice and her husband to everyone. This is my younger daughter, Alice, she said proudly. She and her husband are doing wonderfully. Not once did she introduce me. I felt invisible again. Still, I smiled. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there because he was my father. After dinner, my mother stood on the stage and picked up a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced with excitement, thank you all for coming to celebrate our new home. Everyone applauded. Then she smiled proudly. Tonight, we're going to do something fun. The guests looked at each other curiously. Each family member brought a gift for my husband. Let's see who brought the most expensive gift. The crowd laughed and clapped. I felt uncomfortable. This wasn't a competition. A gift should come from the heart. But my mother loved showing off. One by one, relatives presented their gifts. Someone gave my father a luxury watch. Another gifted a rare painting. Someone else brought a diamond-studded pen. Every expensive gift received loud applause. Finally, my mother called Alice. "My beautiful daughter, it's your turn." Alice smiled confidently and handed my father an elegant wooden box. Inside was a rare bottle of vintage champagne worth $100,000. The guests gasped. My mother clapped excitedly. I knew my daughter would bring the best gift. My father thanked Alice warmly. Then my mother looked toward me. "And now," she said with a mocking smile, "it's Rihanna's turn." I stood up slowly, holding the neatly wrapped gift that Daniel and I had chosen together. Before I could say a word, my mother laughed. "Oh, let's not waste everyone's time." The room fell silent. She looked directly at me. "I'm sure whatever you brought can't compare to these gifts." Several guests looked uncomfortable. Some lowered their eyes. I forced myself to smile. "Mom, it's just a small gift from our hearts." She shook her head. No. We already know it's probably the cheapest gift here." Laughter echoed through the room. I felt tears forming in my eyes. For a moment, I wanted to leave. But then I remembered my children. I wanted them to see that dignity is stronger than anger. So I quietly held my gift and remained silent. Just as my mother turned away, the sound of engines echoed outside the mansion. Everyone looked toward the entrance. One luxury vehicle after another drove through the gate. The crowd whispered in confusion. Then, in the center of the driveway, a stunning limited-edition luxury car slowly came to a stop. Its polished body gleamed under the lights. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out and respectfully opened the rear door. Everyone stared in amazement. Daniel, who had quietly stepped outside a few minutes earlier, walked back into the hall with a calm smile. He was carrying a small velvet box. The entire room fell silent. He walked straight toward my father and placed the velvet box in his hands. "Congratulations on your new home, Dad," he said warmly. My father opened the box. Inside was the smart key to the luxury car parked outside. Confused, he looked at Daniel. "What is this?" Daniel smiled. "That car is our gift to you." The room exploded with shocked whispers. "What? A limited edition luxury car? That's worth a fortune." My mother looked from the key to Daniel, completely speechless. This can't be possible," she whispered. She had always believed Daniel was an ordinary businessman. She had no idea that the biggest surprise of the evening was still waiting. Daniel looked around the room calmly before speaking. "I've stayed quiet for many years because I wanted people to know Rihanna for her heart, not for my family's wealth." He paused. "My full name is Daniel Allison." The room became completely silent. "My father is Mr. Allison, founder and chairman of the Allison Group, one of the largest business empires in this state." Gasps filled the hall. Several businessmen immediately recognized the name. One guest whispered, "The Allison Group? They're billionaires." Another added, "I can't believe he's their son." My mother's face turned pale. Alice stood frozen. My father couldn't believe what he was hearing. Daniel looked directly at my mother. "And tomorrow, everyone in this room will learn why I kept my identity hidden, and why the greatest gift isn't wealth, it's the way we treat people." The moment Daniel revealed his full name, the entire hall fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The guests looked at my husband, then at the luxury car parked outside, and finally at my mother. Just a few minutes earlier, she had laughed at us in front of everyone. Now, the smile had disappeared from her face. One of my father's business friends slowly stood up. "Mr. Daniel Allison?" he asked in disbelief. Daniel nodded politely. "Yes." The man's eyes widened. "I've been trying to schedule a meeting with your company for almost a year." Another businessman quickly walked over. "Sir, it's an honor to finally meet you." Within seconds, several people surrounded Daniel, greeting him with respect. The same people who had ignored us earlier were now eager to shake his hand. I quietly watched everything. Daniel greeted everyone with kindness, but he never acted proud. That was the kind of man he had always been. My mother looked completely confused. She walked toward Daniel with trembling hands. I don't understand," she stammered. "You always dressed so simply. You never showed any signs that you were wealthy." Daniel smiled gently. "Because money isn't my identity. I wanted people to judge us by our character, not by our bank account. Then he looked directly into her eyes. But you judged Rihanna the moment you believed she had married an ordinary man. Every word echoed through the hall. No one could deny it. Everyone had witnessed how she had treated me. Daniel continued calmly. When Rihanna and I got married, I asked my family to keep our business background private. My father agreed. We wanted a normal life. I wanted to know whether people would respect my wife for who she was. He paused before saying, "Unfortunately, some people only respect wealth." My mother lowered her head. For the first time in my life, she had no excuse. My father slowly walked toward me. His eyes were filled with tears. "Rihanna," he whispered, "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I saw your mother's behavior many times, but I stayed silent. I thought things would improve. They never did." His voice broke. "And because I stayed silent, I failed you as a father." I hugged him tightly. "Dad," I said softly, "I never stopped loving you." He cried like a child. Many guests wiped tears from their eyes. Then my father picked up the small gift that my mother had refused to let me present. "Everyone," he said, "before we admire expensive gifts, I want to open the gift my eldest daughter brought." The hall became quiet. He carefully removed the wrapping paper. Inside was a beautifully restored family photograph from many years ago. It showed the four of us, Mom, Dad, Alice, and me, standing together when I was only 6 years old. Behind the frame was a handwritten letter. My father began reading it aloud. "Dear Dad, congratulations on your beautiful new home. I know a house becomes a home because of the people inside it. Thank you for working so hard for our family. I pray this house is always filled with peace, health, and happiness. With love, your daughter, Rihanna." By the time he finished reading, tears were running down his face. He hugged the frame tightly. "This," he said, "is the most valuable gift I received today." The guests applauded, not because of money, but because they understood the meaning behind it. My mother slowly walked toward me. For the first time in years, there was no pride in her eyes, only regret. She knelt in front of me. "Rihanna, I'm ashamed of myself. I spent your entire life comparing you to Alice. I believed beauty and wealth were everything. I forgot that kindness is worth more than both." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I hurt you. I hurt your husband. I even hurt your innocent children. I don't deserve your forgiveness." The room became silent again. Everyone waited for my answer. I looked at my mother for a long moment. Images from my childhood flashed through my mind. The birthdays she ignored. The school prizes she never celebrated. The family dinners where I wasn't invited. The day my son asked me why Grandma didn't love him. Every painful memory returned. I could have humiliated her. I could have reminded her of every cruel word she had spoken. But revenge isn't always about making someone suffer. Sometimes the greatest revenge is showing that pain never changed your heart. I helped her stand. "Mom," I said quietly, "you can't change the past." The little girl who cried herself to sleep every night still lives inside me. Those scars will always remain. But I refuse to let bitterness control my life. "I forgive you." The tears in my mother's eyes became even heavier. "But forgiveness," I continued, "doesn't mean everything returns to normal overnight. Trust must be earned again." She nodded. "I understand." Alice walked toward me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry too," she whispered. "I knew Mom treated us differently. I should have spoken up. I was afraid of disappointing her." I hugged my sister. "This wasn't your fault. You were just a child." From that day on, we promised never to let anyone divide us again. For the first time in many years, we truly felt like sisters. Before leaving the party, Daniel asked everyone for a moment of silence. "I'd like to say one last thing." The hall became quiet. He smiled at me before speaking. "People often believe revenge means destroying those who hurt us. But real revenge is proving that their opinion never defined your future." He looked around the room. "My wife grew up believing she wasn't enough.